Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about ASIO security. A lot of security built in the ASIO portal, and my close personal friend named is Debach is going to be talking to you all about it. Who am I? I am your Scotterator. I'll be sitting here riding the shotgun. You got questions, you throw them in the questions pod for me. I'll get you answered. Questions about the content, we might save it till it's a pertinent time. I might try to answer it right off. If there's an issue with the presentation, you shout it in there right away. Let me know. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the golden pipes of Debach.
Does anybody else hear that voice? I swear there's like a voice coming in around us. I have no idea. But anyways, they said a lot of very interesting and good stuff. Very, very, very good stuff. Maybe even the best stuff we're going to hear around here today. Hopefully not, to be honest with you. But as he said, if you can't hear me, try increasing that device volume. I don't know, did you try turning it off and on yet? I have no idea. If not, then contact the Scotterator over there. And maybe we've got an issue overall with nobody hearing us, right? So we'd like to know that if there is an issue. But do try on your end first. If not, hey, contact us. There are going to be multiple channels you're going to see here, or pods, I should say, my bad, that you can expand down. There is a Q&A panel, and there is also a chat panel. Please, if you have questions pertaining specifically to the content that you're seeing here, put that into the Q&A panel. Anything or any general questions you want to posit for maybe partners out there, or even us perhaps, you can go ahead and put those into the chat panel, and we may be able to get to those if we have some time, but I'd like to reserve the Q&A panel for very specifically focused questions for this webinar. This is being recorded. I don't even know what recorded is, but recorded anyways. Was asked this actually earlier today by an individual whether it's going to be recorded and available in the university. Time permitted, they polish it up, they put a little shine on that thing, and then they upload that sucker, and it will be eventually available in the university, in the video library, under webinars. And that is webinars with an H, maybe even 3 H's, I'm not sure. So let's go ahead and move on. My name is Rob Debach, or Debach if you want to be proper about it, and that's with 5 E's. You can actually use more. I'm flexible on that, but the minimum character count for the E's is 5 and has been set by the man himself in charge of all things software training consultants here in the education department, Scott McQueenie, who is your moderator today. So I've been with ConnectWise for 8 years, still a long time, but still doesn't even touch on the old guy over here that is pushing the buttons and helping everybody out today. I've worn many hats, and most of them in the education department, kind of getting a feel for it. But mostly I centered around RMM, and now I'm kind of branching out into security and some of the newer products we got. I love my cats. I've got a few of them here you can see. We got Apollo here to the left. We've got Spooky or Dookie in the box there. We have Speed Bump and Missy up at the top right here. And then the newest addition we have here is good old Moros. That is M-O-R-O-S, not Morris, but Moros. He is the Greek personification of impending doom. And that is pretty much how we picked him up. He was afraid of the world. I'm into upcycling and repurposing things. What you're seeing here is an old jukebox I picked up for nothing. They were going to get rid of the old shell because they used all the internals to repurpose other jukeboxes. Picked it up for nothing, returned it into a media streamer, so it actually sounds pretty good and plays the tunes in our bar, while the cats can use it as a litter box, and it hides it all away and nobody can see it. It's even got fans for the whole 9 yards, everything. Just probably went a little bit too far. It's actually nicer than my bathroom, if I'm going to be honest with you. I also enjoy long walks. Wait a second, how did that get on there? I'm pretty sure that's my other profile. Anyways, I love helping partners. That's mainly what I've done here with ConnectWise, is help partners, and that's what I enjoy doing. I'm going to go over some security concerns in here, and I shouldn't say concerns, actually considerations, not concerns. It's not like, oh my God, run for the hills, got to look at this now. These are considerations in the ASIO platform as you're setting up and using this environment. Perhaps users and access, of course, these are going to be at the top of the list, along with some features in ASIO to be aware of as we're managing and using the RMM and other extended features in here with users. Now, a key to successful secure implementation is finding a reasonable balance between system protection and user autonomy and, of course, convenience, right? There is a lot of overlap between admins and security professionals alike in the regard, with one big difference. Admins worry about the integrity and operation of a system. Can my users get there? Can my technicians get there? Is it operating? Is it available, right? As security professionals, we need to ensure that the risk in using these tools is mitigated as the systems are set up and ultimately used. What controls are available to reduce surface area and mitigate damages in the event of something happening? This is not a comprehensive deep dive into applying or supplying security services, by the way. I'm going to cover basic controls in ASIO that affect user access and data flows in ASIO, and other things that you may be want to consider beyond those two concepts. So any system, whether we like it or not, as admins, as security professionals, they exist. Users exist, and they exist to actually complete the system, right? From your first administrator that is charged with setting up the accounts, all the way to the end user at a client site looking for remote access to a desktop or another network resource, or maybe just reports on that network, right? ConnectWise ASIO makes user and access restriction easy with predefined access roles, and then ways to customize these roles for your own business needs. Now, there are two main types of users available, which include 6 internal roles: super admin, manager, technician, office staff, sales, and then client site manager. All of these roles have varying levels of access within the ASIO platform. These levels are defined in this matrix at the link here. This allows for an access restriction baseline for you to start from. Then there is a single external user role named end user, appropriately enough, right, for extending client resource access to client end users, so that you can maybe give them access to their own desktop, or the manager can access all desktops. It's very easy to set up a new user in ASIO. Creating users is done from the users in the admin section found under settings. So you'll click new user in here. We'll add a username, of course, an email address for the user, along with a strong password, of course. And you know what? This guy right here, the baklava, I don't like him, so make it really, really strong and annoying and excruciatingly painful for him to get right, at least on the first 3 tries. If they're not doing at least the first 3 tries, you're not even trying to make a password for them, right? So let me hear all about those war stories. You're also going to set here at this point any site access that is not already created through default user access roles, which we're going to cover in a second. But we can go here and say, oh, this guy is going to be my pen tester. I need him to go into old Breach and Breaching's pen testers. Make sure he's got access to that site. So he's going to manage that one and make sure he's got access to that one. Each of the access roles, as I said, are going to have that differing access level to sections of ASIO. And as most know, super admin, unrestricted access, all right, to the platform, as super admins should. And this should be a highly restricted account now. I've been here, like I said, 8+ years with ConnectWise, and I started with Automate. And I know how many users out there just loved running around with super admin and Automate, and how much we had to tell them that was a bad idea. And it is still a bad idea. Doesn't matter what RMM it is, this is always your most highly restricted account. So use this one with caution when you're assigning somebody to that role. This link here is going to take you to a page that better describes and fully details these roles and the differing access of sections in ACO, and kind of describes what they're used for, right? And what their default landing pages are and why they are. Of course, this access composition may not work for all businesses and maturity levels that a business may be at, or all of your users even, or sites, or anybody you may add to your platform, right? So to solve for this, actually, let's go ahead and move this over. You can customize the access of these roles within ACO. For starters, you can customize that default access of any of these access roles you see, right? So we're going to go under settings, we're going to go to admin, users, and then we're going to click on default access under the users here to load the default access editor. And then I can start selecting, well, which one of these roles do I want to change? And from here, I can select one of those 6 roles and toggle the default access to the portal. What tabs can be available to them, and then what features within those tabs do I want to check or uncheck for them to access for this particular role. So this gives you a way to define your own defaults within those 6 user roles we've given you, and kind of start mapping out something that makes more sense for your business. And here we are here, just to blow it up. Once again, we're going to go into those tabs, turn them on or off, and then we're going to choose which of those features under those tabs we want them to have access to. There are also users, so to further refine your own access needs, you can also set actual custom user access, so at the user level itself. We can select the user row here under users, manager users. In this case, we're going to go ahead and select major debacle, because I hear that he's been a major debacle, so let's go ahead and fix some stuff on him, right? So we're going to select this, and once it's loaded, I can now edit this user's access for tabs and features within them. So maybe it's a more restricted version of a technician, and I need to restrict him down to, or maybe he's, like I said, tier 1, or maybe help desk services that I'm using him for, but I can take the technician one and I can kind of map it out from there, give him that role, and then I can override it with some of these here to take some stuff away or add some more stuff on. And this is going to create an exclusive or a limited user type, right, of my own that I need as I need. And ASIO has made it easy to hit the ground running while also adding these necessary controls to customize as I mature or expand, depending on where I am in my maturity levels. So once again, we're looking at the user access here, right? So I can go in here, unload that just like I did at the default levels, except now I'm going and doing this at the user level, and we're selecting those. Yes, MFA is still and will always be important. It will always be a thing. We will always talk about it as long as it still remains an effective way to stop 99.9% of all initial breaches, the incidents that cause these breaches. And just even last year, if you're reading our MSP report, MFA still continues to be an issue with people not using it on certain user sources to access very critical apps for managing business and devices within those businesses. So it's still very critical. Now, ConnectWise, you have many options for MFA and ACO. What we do is Did you hear me, Scott? I'm pretty sure Scott heard me. I said do, and I know he always hears when I say that. But it's going to default to the authenticator, and this is required for all users, by the way, MFA within ACO. But it's going to default at the authenticator sites, which is Google, Microsoft, LastPass, Authy, things like that. Sorry, excuse me. And these really should be on everything that you run. So we've given you also the ability to run Auth Anvil or Duo at this point. Now there is no built-in, like any control users out there might be used to, or perhaps almost used a very old word, automate has the ability to do for these, right? But we do offer these, and I still recommend anything you use as far as your user sources and any critical components for your business, they must use MFA. Now we can edit this, right? Occasionally things happen. Sometimes the phones or other devices used for MFA become missing or broken, right? And they're switched out, or you're switching the type used within your organization. In settings, we can go to admin users here. We can click on a username to go ahead and edit the MFA within there in this user window. Now, when creating or editing a user, I can select the type also from the two-factor authentication dropdown. So this is where I would select the type if I'm changing that as well. But I would just simply check this if I need to reset it for that user, and they would go through the same process they did on their initial login as far as setting up the MFA with their new device or their new browser, whichever case may be, whatever they're using. But like I said, perhaps they lost the phone. They need to set up their new phone for MFA logins. You'd come here, click the reset MFA, say Bob's your uncle, boom, 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 done, right? ACO also allows you to extend some access to client end users, right? Which is a big value add for any company if you can extend functionality to the network resources for various users within those clients' sites. And the end user portal is going to, the view for them is going to differ depending on configuration options selected for that particular user. If the user does not have access to the entire site, then they're only going to see by default desktop reports and server reports. If user accounts with full site access are enabled, then they will see desktops, servers, network devices, backup solutions, and maybe even a little bit more. But providing this is a big value, but you're going to want to think about how you structure, how you allow them to do this and what they're allowed to access. So you have to find out from your client, should they only access one particular desktop? I'm going to have to limit that, right? And you're going to have to go through those and figure out as you're figuring out, well, first you would set them as a client role here, as you can see, as a client end user. And then we can go in here and we can say site access. This is the site they have access to. Resource access is limited. So I'm going to give them access to one desktop, Edu Workstation one here, right? And then I can save that. So now NotCo. Oh, I'm so happy we did this. We don't need NotCo running rampant around here. So I'm going to go ahead and check that off. He's going to have access to only that workstation from that point on after I've done at that client side level. But managers, they may need access to every desktop for users underneath them. So these are things you're going to need to work out with, of course, your client for that kind of client and user access. Now, remote access is a feature in RMM or ACO that allows technicians to take control of a device remotely for troubleshooting. Its use can be restricted and should be restricted for security reasons. Remote access is provided through the inclusion of ConnectWise control in ACO. A user with access can remotely control, as I said, first of all, remotely control. So here they can access it, and it's just as if they were sitting at the desk. We're going to log in with a user account that has privileges for running this local station, and we're going to run in and use it. Or we don't even need to let the user know or anybody know behind the scenes. We can run shell sessions against this. These are full real-time shell sessions that we're logging into from behind the scenes here. And we can run any scripts, bring up some PowerShell, bring up some regular command line commands, and start running through and taking care of this device right from here in the back end without any users knowing. So it's a good way to get things done if you can. And then also, big enchilada here is they also have access to the control host page, provided they have a login and a username and a role that gives them access to the host page. And then, of course, the restricting of the access, whether it be the admin host page or not in there, which we'll go over in just a second. But because of the power in this feature in control, you want to limit access by some method that makes sense for roles and size, right? You need to mitigate any damage and costs on the end. So as you're expanding, you need to make sure, well, this technician is only working this site, make sure they can only access these site computers, and vice versa, right? So we need to develop things in here. What we can start to do is we can set user access first. So once again, we're in this edit user. I'm bringing up Major Debacle because he's a Major Debacle once again. And I actually don't want him to have any control, so I'm not going to check this box here. He's an office staff member. He needs no remote access. At no point is this user going to be remoting in to any of the devices. So I ensure that, of course, by default as well, that the allow remote control access is unchecked from here. And it is. This one's good to go. They're not going to get that access. But if I wanted them to have access to that, I would set that for that. And then ultimately, I can also control this by sites. So I'm going to go into the, once again, settings, RMM setups. I'm going to go into sites using the RMM. And then I'm going to choose a site. In this instance, it's Pizza Pizza HQ. Then I'm going to go to the product options tab, and I'm going to decide whether I want to use control access for desktops and or servers. Also, whether I want control access to do one-click enable, which doesn't require the input of the password again, the account password for getting into it, for controlling it. This is where we stop in our discussion of securing control as it pertains to ACO, but what I can say, we do webinars, done presentations at nation events, and we have a whole entire lesson dedicated to securing your control and things to consider in addition to what we've already talked about here within ACO. And there are a lot of considerations when you're running a control server, even for the people that are running it, as far as like access level controls and what they can do, what sort of access can they remote into? Should they be asking first, or can they just go right in? Things like this. There's a whole plethora of this information in this lesson here, and I highly recommend it for fully fleshing out basically your security within ACO, because this is a very powerful tool. It's used as a last resort when automation and monitoring is not working, but it can be a very costly tool for you to use if somebody else uses it against you. So do take that lesson, run through it, find out the various ways that you can control access to the control server itself. Did I say control? We're going to control the security in your control so you can control your security. Because I heard you love security. Wait a second. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but I'm pretty sure I already talked about where passwords were and how to reset them and how to secure them with MFA.
Yeah, you did.
What more can I say about them, buddy? How about, wait a second, all the passwords your internal users or our support services need for accessing network resources at the managed site? Aha! We have not talked passwords yet. The password vault is going to be located at Settings, RMM Setup, Site, Passwords tab. So we're going to go ahead and pick a site here. In this case, once again, we're at Pizza Pizza HQ. We've clicked on that good old passwords tab here, right? This is where you're going to store passwords for your internal users and support services like our knock or our socks. Knock our socks off. Yeah. Anyways, there are a few categories depending on the type of passwords. You can use actual access roles to limit the access to this tab for roles that need them only or users that need them only. And we'll show you a way to also make groups so that you can make, I don't know, maybe there's a patching group, or maybe there's a Veeam group, or maybe there's a ESXi group that you have, right? So as you're going to these sites, you can create these credential groups that have access to these very specific kind of services and give them only access to that, instead of doing it by user choice and then maintaining that by group and adding users into that group willy-nilly as you need them. So we're going to take a look at that in a second here as well. So here's what it looks like here. We're going into passwords. I'm going to just take server passwords for an example here. We're using a domain account, we're using a local account. We're going to first figure that out. We're going to provide the username, the password. We can actually choose whether we want dynamic or static. In the image here, I provided a password, so I'm probably going to do static. But if you do dynamic, the password is actually updated by the agent itself. It's going to be changed by the agent and managed by the agent itself there. So that's something for you to consider. It's kind of a way for nobody to know the password really, and for it to be able to still access based on who should have the access to that password at any given time to access those machines. When we look in here, I can set admin users. I can go through there, or normal users. I can check the people that should have access to these passwords as I'm setting those passwords in here. And I'm going to then apply those, and each one of those passwords I'll set this. And you can see we have group name there, but right now there's no groups to display here. And we're going to get to that, as I said, in a second. But here are those categories. I was talking about them. The first two are pretty evident, right? I mean, you've got servers you're managing, you've got desktops you're managing, and then if you're tossing any of those services off to us, to our NOC or our SOC or our help desk services, then of course we're going to need access to those server and desktop passwords as well. So those are pretty evident. Then you have lights out management, often referred to as out of band remote control. And the reason for that is you can initiate some remote functionality of that physical device, even when it is shut down, provided there is power and a network connection to that card. Then these are used to bring many servers back online in those instances, right? So two examples would be Dell iTrack and HP iLoad, to be named some common ones, but there are so many, right? But if the main point is, if I want the NOC to access these devices, I'm going to need to make sure that the passwords are listed under there for these lights out management devices at each site. Then we also have predefined and custom applications like Terminals Exchange. You'll go in there and you can just select it and it's already there. It's pre-filled out. You put in whatever is needed for that particular password or device. And then you have the actual custom passwords and properties. A lot of these are used for integration points. We might be adding an ACO. One might be, the big one is the BDR recover, right? Or recover BDR complete, I should say, utilizing Veeam. In order for the NOC to support those services, we're going to need all of the VSPC passwords associated with that so that they can access those and put those in. And then last but not least, you've got vPro, which is a whole platform in and of itself, which also includes some out-of-band access to it too. So it's got its own predefined password category for you to put those in for. When creating passwords for services and devices, you may also create password access control groups, as I was saying, and then assign those groups to passwords that they're going to need. So in this point, I'm going to go ahead and put together the pizza elites, right? These are the bros watching the dough. These are my two best guys. I'm going to put them up on here, or my three best guys, I should say. I'm going to put them up on this site. They're going to watch the dough for Pizza Pete. So we've created that, we've saved it. Now I've gone to my passwords again. I go into my partner defined desktop passwords and I say Pizza Lee here. Click, boom, done. Now if I ever need to change the composition of that group, I can go back into the access groups and I can edit the membership of that group without affecting any of the groups they may be in. So like I said, the better example may be I have people who work on ESXi machines. So any site that has ESXi, I'll make an ESXi group, and then I'll use that group on any site that has ESXi, and I'll assign those ESXi admins to that particular site to do the ESXi servers. Now, a preferred and secure way of allowing support access, you know, the back-end office, all those services I was talking about from us, is to enable automatic credentials. Enabling automatic credentials on desktops and services allows for the system itself to manage and generate passwords for NOC, SOC, help desk services, and everything in between, right? So when configuring server automatic credentials, you need to also select the access level at this point then. Should they be able to reboot it willy-nilly whenever they want to, or is there a certain policy they're going to have to adhere to at this point? So we're going to have to look at those access levels and the reboot schedules that they should adhere to for servers on this point. We're going to apply this either to the entire site or we can apply it to selected devices at this point. At this point, we're going to go ahead and select 2 devices here, sites, and go ahead and apply it to those sites. What this does is ensure a seamless and secure method for ConnectWise to support your business for you now. IP restriction. So when it comes to security, a layered approach is the best approach, starting with, of course, your biggest risks. What are the biggest threats to your company, the biggest risks you're taking on? How can we mitigate those? And that's what we're going to start with. But one of the things we can use in ACO to start adding even more strength to the security here is IP restriction. And this is found under settings, once again, and we can create approved IP lists in CIDR notation within here to use, right? Using CIDR notation format, we can create a list. So we're going to go through an example. I'm going to put in my own IP and my name. But before enabling any IP restriction, as you can see here at the top, IP restriction disabled right now. It's a good thing because I've got no IPs in there. Henceforth, nobody is accessing that puppy anytime soon if I slide that slider over, right? So what we need to do is make sure we're including our own IP address and any IP addresses we need, and to help additional services like help desk and knock, which we'll go through in a second here. You'll see plenty of warnings that come up to let you know and help you, guide you into setting up this list as you go before you actually kick that slider over and use this feature. So here we are here. As you can see, I've added mine now. Bada bing, bada boom. I probably should have gone ahead and taken that IP address out of there, but that's one freebie this time for you. But we're going to add this to the IP allow list now. We're going to give it a unique name. We're going to put that IP address in there, and that's how I got that in there. Here it is blown up. I gave it a name. I put that IP address in there. That suffix needs to be between 22 and 32 in that CIDR notation. And then we're going to add that in there. Like I said, we want to start adding all the IPs we need into here. So we're going to add the office one. I added Debach because he's just a pain in the butt manager, likes to work from home all the time and needs this IP address put in there. I'm sorry. So we went and put that in there. We've got the office in there. For most of the other technicians that come in, they're going to go in there and come in through that IP address. So they'll be accessing it. Hold on a second. Whoops. Once again, if I've opted for those services I was talking about, we're going to need some way of letting those in too. Here's that big old warning to let you know every time you come in, if you haven't done it, to hit allow here, to go ahead and allow us access to put our IP addresses in there for the knock services and such as well. Now, anytime an authorized user is logging in from an unauthorized IP, they're going to receive a notification like this, that they cannot log in at the moment. Boo-hoo-hoo. Now, if they continue to attempt to log in from the IP, what it's going to do is, of course, lock the account. But it's also going to send an email to that user with instruction on how to unlock and then add the IP they are using to the list. This does happen. IP addresses may change. We've gone through this and we've had this discussion amongst the bros and I, the auto bros and I. What would we happen if all these people working from home with dynamic IP addresses changes? Well, first of all, they should be coming in through a VPN, right? So once they're in through the VPN, they're coming in through that network's IP as far as any services they're using are concerned. So that should alleviate that issue there. But if you have this very stingent person like Debach, who is like that, he's going to get this nice little email in there saying, listen, here, come on, click on this. Let's go, and then it's going to take him to the page to go ahead and now add their IP in here. And bada boom, bada bing, Bob's your uncle. They now have restored their access to the ACO platform, and they can use it, right? Now, this functionality is accessible to the super admin's role by default, but it will also be available as a permission under settings, admin, user's default access to be assigned to the following roles: manager, technician, client site manager, and office staff. Sorry, client and users, you will not get this same treatment. We're going to quickly go over some policies and packages, what they mean. Really, at the basis of this policy, it's settings. What feature are we talking about? A communicator? We're talking about patch policy settings we want to put across our devices we're managing. Those are policies. Those individual settings for those features are the policies. The packages are then the aggregates of those policies. We may be assigning per site. We may be assigning by a policy group. And we may even be assigning them to a device. But either way, this is how we're going to then deliver the policies, the assorted policies for each of those features to the packages. So I'm going to provide a name, and then I'm going to go ahead and toggle the features I want in here as necessary. And then I'm going to go ahead and click save to save this policy. So in this point, I'm just doing a basic global communicator policy that only has help desk chat. So at my baseline, I'm going to go ahead and maybe make this my default policy across everything, right? So this now becomes the default communicator policy. Everybody gets help desk chat. If they need more, I add those in, and then I assign them out either by site or by policy groups, right? So let's take a quick look at that. For example, I'm going to need different communicator policies for different sites or different types of resources. So I can start with that Blaze global policy that I had, and I'm not sure why it's not going on here. There it is. And we're going to go ahead and add that policy in there. So we have 3 policies here and we can make. And what we can do is we can create packages here. I can say click add package, or I can go to groups here first and I can add a group. So we have packages, sites, policies, and groups. I can go to sites and I can apply policies per site here, or I can move on to policy groups, which may be a better way of looking at things. Like maybe I need policy groups for patching. I'm going to do these by server types and by desktop types, OS types, whatever it may be, right? Or particular software they have on it. And I'm going to make those policy groups for those patchings. So we're going to go ahead and at this one, just make a different communicator policy for that patch or for that group. And then we're going to make that group and we're going to go ahead and add whatever policies we want to put into that as a package for that group and assign that out as needed. So here's Pizza Pete, HQ Desktops. We're going to go ahead and give him that policy group we put together. It has a patching policy and a communicator policy specifically for Pizza Pete's HQ. And we've gone ahead and assigned that package out to it. The important part to remember when we're assigning or making policies or packages is how do these all shake down, right? What is the hierarchy we need to worry about when we're securing features? Whether we're securing them by site, we need to worry about securing them by policy group. This is how it's going to break down. Factory, that's us. That's your baseline. That's whatever is given by the software, whatever everything is set at from the get-go, whatever you're doing. Default is then going to be the highest level of the next hierarchy, and that's going to be any defined defaults you have put in for any values or settings. This will be considered then above factory, but after that comes site. If you've applied any policy settings at the site level, that will then trump defaults and of course factories and everything before it. And going on down the list, we looked at that example of creating a policy group. Say I'm making a SQL, MS SQL patching policy group, and I've created that, and I've created the policy for that, the patching policy for that, and assigned that package to the policy group. And then everything from that point on in that group is going to then get that policy for that patching. Then the very, very highest exception level is at the device itself, right? So if we've assigned a policy or a package directly on a device, then that is the absolute exception to it, right? And that should be used pretty sparingly, right? Those are your exceptions to your edge cases, your baselines you've created, your standards you're willing to support, or anything that you've created within your structure and your models. Now, last but not least, I'm only going to take a brief moment here to discuss the cybersecurity page itself, right? We have a suite of products ourselves, and you're going to use these tools, or you should be using these tools to gain security services with your clients and start securing them and gaining additional revenue, and also making them more secure and bringing your own risks down in the same action all at once, right? So for any organization looking to manage these services, they've created a new landing page for this. You can look into any one of these, start a conversation with your own account reps, get those trials going, find out information for using any one of these security services that we have here. SOC services themselves, SaaS. But what I want to start with here first is the assessments. Before you can build out security for your clients, you need to know what their risks are. This is the best way to apply security for them. Because remember, security is not about stopping every threat. If you think you're going to do that, stop kidding yourself. You can't do that. It's all about mitigating the risk for any business so that they understand the costs associated with taking on the risks, or using technology or some other scheme to mitigate that risks, right? They need to understand the costs in avoiding those risks and how that can benefit them to use technology most of the time to avoid those risks in their business. So we need to tie that to that. And then to do that, we need to understand our own risks. How are you looking? Are you actually mitigating the own risks in your own company right now, right? Now, assessments are deployed from within the ACO platform, all from a single pane, and it's very easy to do. It's actually really just 3 clicks in here. But what is it going to give you? What does it do? It's going to scan and report and assess security risks related to endpoint health, user accounts, dark web exposure, etc. And findings are compiled into a pre-built report with visuals and easily digestible formats for you. You're going to be able to prioritize and remediate, right? This focused response based on the severity of risk that is critical to your business or your client's operations, which is pretty much your business. Their business is your business. And this is going to help you map out long-term requirements and commitments to structuring and strengthening that security posture. It's also just going to deepen your cyber understanding period, right? It's going to advance your clients and your own understanding of the threats out there and things we need to be looking at as we're securing our business. Now, 4 simple steps in the portal to access assessments to fill this out. Simply generate a link. They then run the utility from that link. You download the reports. It's as simple as that. Then you're given all of this kind of information. And I'm going to point this out because right here, number 4 under risk assessment for MSPs, peer benchmarking. How do you look against other MSPs in your field, in your industry? How much risk are you taking on compared to them? If you're taking on too much risk, it's probably time you start doing something about that. So these assessments are going to help you with that. Also, dark web assessments. We can monitor on our domains for our accounts that use ACO or use any services within our business. We can go ahead and set up dark web monitoring. So this way, if there is a breach, forbid, we're going to know about it when it comes up for sale on the dark web or gets posted on any of the dark web discoveries from the crew. So boom, right here, I'm going to know. Whoop. Ronald over here at youngandyoungin.com, you better go take care of that. May 30th, 2022, high risk score in there. And I hate to say this, but password reuse is a big issue right now still. This started with, it's still relevant from last year with the Colonial Pipeline, which was one of the biggest shutdowns of infrastructure in national history so far, right? And that was because of a reuse of a VPN password discovered out on the dark web. Boom, done. So we need to start looking out on the dark web and looking at these things. Recover is mostly in our UMM pillar, but to me, backup services are pretty much still security, right? So I'm going to talk quickly about one particular feature within the recovery umbrella. Recover itself is not a standalone BDR or backup solution, right? What it is a way of managing multiple different backup solutions. And I'm going to bring it up because for free within Recover SaaS, you have Azure AD Backup. So if you use your Azure AD in your business, or any of your clients are using Azure AD Backup, this is a no-brainer to get this activated and start using Azure AD Active Backup right now as that kind of foot in the door. It's going to show you the value of monitoring backups through Recover, especially SaaS backups here with Recover SaaS, and it's going to show your clients that value in your ability to also manage those backups from here. And like I said, it's free. It's going to go up into the cloud, full protection in the cloud. It's easy to set up. You get easy recovery, configurable retention, and you can quickly find and restore full objects or just metadata on those objects, which is what I wanted to show you today, is a quick demo on that. So here we are looking at an individual in Office 365. They were inadvertently, by some means, given a manager role in Exchange. This could have been accidental by an admin, or it could be rampant, errant, rogue automation that did that. But for whatever reason, we're going to find this user now in SaaS, Recover. We're going to choose the object metadata here. And then we're given a previewer here to see any differences that have happened. And I'm going to find those differences on the Difference tab, and I'm going to find the date that that change happened. Now I'm going to go to my versions previewer, and we're going to find the date in question here, and we're going to recover to the prior snapshot before that here. Now we're going to go ahead and just set that, recover, restore that. We're going to get a warning here letting us know this can't be undone, of course. And we've got a little COIAs in here for you. Then we're going to do that, and we can check the progress here in the job monitor. So we can click on job monitor. You'll see here it's just started, 0% progress. You can also see from the dashboard any recovery jobs like that have started, and you can see here we're successful. So we're going to go into Office 365 now, and we're going to confirm those changes. So we're going to go to that user. We're going to check the metadata, and as you can see here, now we've restored that back to a standard user with their old manager. So bada boom, bada bing. If you're using Azure Active Directory, it's kind of a no-brainer to also start using Recover SaaS now and start using that Active Directory, Azure Active Directory connector for your backup needs. And with that said, that's pretty much all we have to discuss at this point for basic ACO security and settings we need to worry about. Are there any questions out of there that we needed to queue up there?
Hey, bro.
Hey, bro. Caw-caw. Caw-caw.
I'll go ahead and tell you there's one particular question that I, as a matter of fact, have curiosity about. What I'm doing is I'm priming the question pump. I'm going to lead with the first question. Now everybody else is going to be like, oh yeah, let me get my question in now. Here's what mine was. This goes way back like this. Boop, boop, boop. If you back up early in the presentation, when you're creating a new user and you're setting like site access, like I think you had mentioned in that part, their defaults, like, so I'm adding it to new technician. So for every new technician I need, every new technician I add, I need to set which specific sites they have access to? Like, is there a check all button or something?
There is not a check all button. So if we are setting those up like that, then yes, you will have to set each individual user at a site access. What is coming, and we're going to be able to expand this a little bit later, is we're restructuring to companies and sites, the same thing we're used to in Manage and other products within ConnectWise, right? And then we're going to be able to restructure in those similar fashions we're more similar to, or used to, I should say, in those. But at this point, yes, you have to go into any user and set those, or you can set defaults for certain clients. Like if they're accessing every technician access these clients, we can go into this, and then we can set others, users, for additional access into those. But yes, at this point, right now it's an all or nothing set at the defaults level for those.
Cool, thanks. At this time, I do not have any questions from the audience members.
Well, I am not done yet.
Aha.
Come on, I'm not here. I'm not here to mess around, people. I'm here to help. What I can tell you are there are best practices to follow when we're onboarding. So you may want to check out that link for the onboarding practices. Report security concerns. Boom, you've got a link for it. If there's things going on or any questions you do have regarding, doesn't matter what it is, security within the ACO platform, hit up that link. They will be willing to answer any of those questions. Also look to the ConnectWise Cyber Research Unit for any new information we should be worried about as MSPs. They are very focused in both aggregating information from the dark web and other security websites with a very MSP-minded focus to their aggregations. So they're finding all that information that pertains to you guys specifically and helping you out. So it's a very good source of information to make sure you know what's going on out there. Last but not least, this is part of the crew's annual assessment of what's going on and what to look for each year. This is the 2022 version of that, the MSP Threat Report, and it's got a lot of great information in there. I mentioned the Colonial pipeline attack that happened last year. That's in there. Some other things that have happened with MFA and people gaining access to other remote utilities that we just may not name here. We're just going to go ahead and avoid that. We don't want to be jerks about it, right? So we won't mention those, but they are also mentioned in that threat report for you to read and assess on your own and judge as you will. With that said, that is all I have for you, and there are no other further questions. So I'd like to thank everybody who did join me today, and I hope you got something out of it. I hope you learned something. If you have any further questions, go ahead and let us know at education@connectwise.com. Thanks.